happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am D-WIZZLE here with another movie review. Today we're going to be talking about the new film Renfield, starring Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult. Let's get into this. So I think this is the first time I'm actually talking about the Universal Classic Monsters on my channel, which kind of surprises me because I'm actually a really big fan of the Universal Classic Monsters. I'm such a horror fanatic. I'm surprised they haven't came up earlier. But yeah, I love the Universal monsters. Dracula, the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein, all that stuff. I love those movies. Yeah, they're old. Yeah, they're black and white, but they're still very well made movies. I love the cinematography, the atmosphere, all that. It's definitely helped pave the way for a lot of horror films today. And I feel like they're underappreciated now. Not a lot of people talk about the Universal monsters, which I guess I kind of understand nowadays because with Universal trying to revive their classic monsters with modern movies, it's been met with mixed results, to say the least. Of course, I'm a fan of the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, that trilogy. For the most part, I'm a fan of them. I'm more of a fan of the original Mummy movie, and the second one was kind of a guilty pleasure. The third one I didn't really like at all, but overall, I am a fan of those set of Mummy films, and I did like the Wolfman movie starring Benicio del Toro. I thought I liked that. I think that one's underrated. But yeah, as far as them trying to revive the other monsters over the past few years, they haven't been very successful. Stuff like I Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, Dracula Untold, Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. I know there's people that like that movie, but I was not a fan of that one. And of course, probably the most infamous one was the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that came out in 2017, which was trying to create a modern Universal Monster cinematic universe called Dark Universe. We all remember that fiasco. Yeah, that didn't work out very well for them. Which is such a shame, because I really want them to try and do another Universal Monsters universe, but Universal just keeps dropping the ball, and it's such a shame. And with that 2017 Mummy movie, it's not a good movie. I didn't think it was very good, but I did think there was some things about that movie that I thought was interesting, so it's a shame that they pretty much abandoned that. But now with Blumhouse merging with Universal, they've been trying to go back to the drawing board and not worry so much about having like a big blockbuster universe, and just went back to focusing on telling individual stories with these Universal monsters, which I think would be a good approach for now until they can actually find someone that has a coherent vision, for the Universal monsters. And that's where we had the Invisible Man that came out in 2020, and I thought that movie was great. Didn't worry about a bigger universe. It was pretty standalone, and then it was low budget too, very low budget, and it made it very easy to be a success at the box office. But that was a good example of them trying to revive the Universal monsters. And apparently there are rumblings that Blumhouse was trying to do other movies with the classic monsters similar in the vein of the Invisible Man. I haven't heard a lot of news going about that. Of course, there was that rumor about the Ryan Gosling Wolfman movie and the James Wan produced Frankenstein film and other stuff like that. We'll see if that actually comes out, but it'd be great if if it's anything like the Invisible Man, we're definitely in good hands. But then there came this other project called Renfield. And I will say, at the time, I was a bit dubious about this Renfield project. Originally, this was supposed to be a part of the Dark Universe, but apparently they did a whole bunch of retooling since the Mummy was not a success for them. So now they decided to just go completely standalone with this. And they decided to get Nicholas Hoult as Renfield and Nicolas Cage as Dracula, and I'll say that was kind of interesting casting. I mean, Nicholas Hoult, I think that's he was fine. I'm pretty much I'm a fan of Nicholas Hoult. I've enjoyed him in quite a bit of things, but I haven't loved him in everything. He didn't really blow me away as Beast in the X-Men movies, but I was interested to see what he would do with this. It's not the first time he's in like a horror comedy project. You remember him in Warm Bodies, and I actually liked him a lot in Warm Bodies. Now Nicolas Cage as Dracula, that was an interesting casting. Nicolas Cage, uh, I would say I'm a fan of his. There'll be projects that I've seen that he's like not very good in, and he's way too over the top for me. But we forget that Nicolas Cage is an Academy Award winning actor, and when he tries, he does really really good. So I don't know. Nicolas Cage is kind of hit or miss for me, but we have seen that there is somewhat of a revival of Nicolas Cage's career over the past couple of years, with him trying harder with his movies and being more selective about his roles. I guess now he wants to try because now he's not in debt anymore. Yeah, I've heard about that whole, ordeal with him. But over the past couple of years he's been, he's actually been trying a bit harder with his roles and he's been more entertaining. So I have not seen the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but I've heard that was an entertaining movie. But with him as Dracula, that was very interesting. He definitely wasn't my first choice. And I'm, with Dracula, I feel like they've been really dropping the ball with Dracula, because like over the past few years, we haven't gotten a good iteration of Dracula. Luke Evans in Dracula Untold, like, he was trying, but like the material that they gave him wasn't very good. So Nicolas Cage's Dracula, I don't know if that's the type of iteration that we need right now. Do we need the wacky, over the top Dracula? But what I've heard is that Nicolas Cage is a huge fan of the Dracula character, and he knows about all the different iterations over the years. So at least they got somebody that cares about the character, So interested to see what would happen with them. And overall, I like this movie. I thought it was a good time. It was such a surprise. I didn't, like I said, like I didn't expect much with this, this being a horror comedy and Nicolas Cage being Dracula. I didn't really expect too much with this, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of waited to go see this because I was a bit apprehensive about it. But I did hear pretty good reviews towards this movie, and regardless of the reviews, I was curious about how he would be as Dracula. And me being the Universal Monsters fans, it feels like kind of an obligation for me to see this movie. But as I said, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage did a really, really good job in this movie. Um, I guess let me start with Nicholas Hoult before we talk about Cage. So I thought Nicholas Hoult was pretty solid as Renfield. He brought a dimension to Renfield that we haven't really seen before. As far as like Universal monster characters, Renfield doesn't seem to be talked about as much as like the main people that would know about, like Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein, and stuff like that. But he is an integral character to the Universal monsters lore, especially with Dracula. So it's nice that they gave this character more attention. But what I liked about this version of Renfield is that, I like the kind of the toxic relationship dynamic that they explored with him and Dracula, because like in like the old iterations of Dracula, it just seems like Renfield was just like a mindless servant to him. He was entertaining to watch, but like, he didn't feel like there was too much dimension with Renfield in the older movies, at least not as much as here. They actually make Renfield more of a tragic character in this, and that made him much more interesting. Like I said, just seeing how him serving Dracula was taking a toll on his life mentally and physically over centuries. It made me really feel bad for him. It just made him more of a sympathetic character. I didn't know how to feel about making him more of a sympathetic character because he was very over the top and like mustache twirling in the older Universal movies, but in this one I like the change of pace with his character. And what I also didn't expect while this is like a horror comedy, this was actually a pretty decent action movie as well. There's some really, really good set pieces in this movie. I was very surprised about that. Really, really cool action sequences throughout this film. I like that it was able to blend different genres together for the most part very, very well. It is a horror movie, but it is also a comedy and it's also an action film. So it did that stuff very well. Also, on top of that, this movie is extremely bloody. There's gore and blood, limbs being chopped off, all that stuff. So it was much more violent than I thought it was going to be, and I thought it was absolutely glorious. It does warrant the hard R rating that it has. Um, but yeah, let's talk about Nicolas Cage's Dracula. Like, man, like I said, I didn't know how to feel about him being casted, but watching him in this movie, I was pleasantly surprised. I was so entertained with his version of Dracula. And you know what? I might be confident to say this, which, I don't think this is too much of a hot take, but this is probably one of my favorite versions of Dracula I've seen in years. Is that really a hot take? Because of, let's look at all the other iterations of Dracula we've gotten recently. So, yeah, but him as Dracula might be one of my favorite versions of Dracula. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, he was just so he was just so entertaining to watch. He was, chewing up scenery. He was, very kooky. He was mustache twirling, but like it wasn't in the typical Nicolas Cage way that we're used to seeing, that it's corny or it's stupid. Like, no, like he actually gave a lot more personality. But on top of him being over the top and hammy, like they didn't abandon like the menace of Dracula. You still felt like he was a scary, intimidating presence, and I could feel that Nicolas Cage was honing in a bunch of the other versions of Dracula we've gotten. He was paying homage to the other versions with his performance, and I definitely felt that. So yeah, man, like I was definitely surprised by him as Dracula. Um, Probably my one negative about it is that I wish he was in the movie more, because he's not in it that much. I mean, it's not too much to the point where you forget that he's in the film, but like, I was expecting him to be in the movie just as much as Renfield, and he really isn't. And it goes to one of my other issues, which I'll get to in a second. But like, man, I wish there was more of him in this movie. Like, just like whatever scenes he has with Renfield, like that alone, like I was engaged with the whole time. Like he was scary, he was funny, he was charismatic, he was over the top, he was the right amount of silly. It wasn't too much, but still he was very scary and intimidating. you know and like the kills that he does is so creative how they do it. And seeing the different powers that he has, I liked it a lot. Now, the one thing that kind of didn't work for me that much was, and probably one of the reasons why we don't get Nicolas Cage that much in this movie, is because there's this whole B plot with Awkwafina as the cop trying to take down this drug gang, and I didn't think that it needed to be in the movie. I'll be honest. It felt like, with the plot with Renfield and Dracula, like it felt like that whole thing wasn't long enough. They didn't like flesh it out that much, and like it wasn't able to fill an hour and a half. So they were like, let's add another plot in here to give it a little more substance and try to connect it to the Renfield Dracula story as much as we can. But I just didn't care about this crime lord stuff. Aquafina, as I said before in the past, I'm not the biggest fan of Aquafina. Now, there have been a couple of movies that I've seen her in the past couple years that I thought she was good. Like, I did like her in Raya and the Last Dragon, and I liked her in Shang-Chi. But everything else, I'm just like, no, I'm not a fan. This one, she was okay as the cop in this movie that befriends Renfield. Like, she was fine. Um, but like I said, nothing really too memorable. The friendship between her and Renfield was okay. You felt like they were slightly trying to tease a romance in there, but they don't go anywhere with it, to be honest. But yeah, I just didn't care about the drug lord stuff either. Like, Ben Schwartz is in this movie, and he's like one of the main like crime lords, and him. I didn't like him in this movie at all. Like he's tried to be more wacky and over the top than Nicolas Cage was. Pretty much what I was worried that Nicolas Cage was going to be in this movie. That's what Ben Schwartz was in this film, and I just didn't care for that at all. Honestly, like they could cut out that whole drug lord cop thing with Awkwafina. It like the whole movie could have been about Renfield and Dracula, which is what I was hoping it would be. But yeah, I just don't know why. It felt like that whole cop plot. It felt like it was in a completely different film. Um, but yeah, that's probably my only like main issues with the film. Overall, I thought this movie was a good time. One of the better Universal monster movies for sure. I thought that Nicholas Hoult as Renfield was really really good. I like them exploring the dynamic between him and Dracula and him being like a blind servant and stuff like that. I thought that was very interesting, and seeing how he wants to get out of that servitude that Dracula has, making him more of a tragic emotional character. I thought that was very endearing. Nicolas Cage as Dracula, I thought was great. One of the best Dracula performances I've seen in years, and I'm not kidding. Definitely was surprised by him. Aquafina was fine. It didn't really ruin the movie for me. It was more the overall plot with her, trying to take down this drug gang, whatever. Didn't care about that at all. They could have completely cut that story out, and it would have been a better movie. I was definitely surprised by the action scenes in this movie and how bloody it was. And overall, the comedy aspect was worked very well for the most part. So yeah, hopefully with the Universal, if they, stay at least with this type of quality with Invisible Man and this, I think Universal will be back on track with them trying to revive the Universal Monster franchise. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what other Universal monsters they try to revive next. So yeah, overall, I will give Renfield a B. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Renfield. What did you guys think about it? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Did you guys think it was okay? Comment your thoughts down below and let me know. If you guys enjoyed this review, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so it will help a lot. Don't be a ninja watcher. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell if you want to be notified on future videos I'll be doing. But that's all I have for you Universal Monster fans, and I will see you guys next time. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.